Here's a recording that could almost be now described as historical. It was of a part of the VK2WI news broadcast from mid-April 1995. The date could have been either April the 16th or April the 9th.
Now, here is your announcer and engineer for this evening's broadcast. Good evening and welcome to the broadcast. With the engineering help, we're actually on air this evening. And just reminding you, this is the VK2WI with the weekly news broadcast from the New South Wales Division of the Wales Institute of Australia. This broadcast is transmitted from Sydney and through several relay stations. And your announcer this evening is Alan, VK2WI. And our engineer is VK2CZX this evening, doing a great job in there and sorting everything else out, and making sure that we're on air here. And all the needles seem to be flickering away, so we could even be going up. It looks like the 160 transmitter is actually working. Yes, look at that. Fantastic stuff. Right, I can't tell you too much about the weather other than it's dark. I can't tell you the temperature because last time I was here there was a snazzy inside-outside digital thermometer, or temperature meter. Probably familiar. Oh, it's gone. Oh well. It's chilly around the edges these days, that's all I can say for the evening. Let's move on. We've got the highlights of the news broadcast tonight. First up, we'll have the President's report. We've got football news, divisional news, magazine roundup, Wyson news, news briefs, contest news, Australian band plans, IPS weekly report, club news, coming events, and finally the broadcast roster. So let's start tonight's broadcast off with, as usual, the President's report. Here's Michael.
This is Michael Corbin, VK2PSQ. After last week's appeal for solidarity, I was most disappointed to inform Barack another state the following fax message. This division still hasn't received a copy. Division President and Federal Council. He claims to be the work of the WIA Federal President, Lord Pumpo. Nobody, yes nobody in this division has received a copy of this letter. From the Federal President, Federal Media Liaison Officer, or indeed the Federal Office itself. You will recall that the same applies to the letter I read to you last weekend. So I'll read this one to you now. And I quote, as you will be aware from the WIA news item recently circulated, amateur licence fees, $51 for now, the Institute has been invited by the government to put a submission as to how the amateur service might be better licensed in the future. That submission is being researched, collated and confirmed by Institute Vice Chairman Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH, as he was a principal party to the meeting with Paul Elliott, who has been licensed for more than 30 years, has been involved in the federal arena since the Institute's original submissions to the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Transport and Communications Infrastructure, and during the last year's submissions to the SMA on apparatus licensing. In addition, he is a skilled researcher and writer, which is, after all, his profession. Since the meeting with Paul Elliott on the 6th of March, Roger has been gathering views and arguments from many sources, from tapping many resources appropriate to the task, from the legal opinion of the Radio Communications Act, to the spectrum of views of individual amateurs and amateur groups expressed on the Packet Radio Network and in phone calls and letters, along with divisions of views. The argument will win the day. I'll shortly be sending you a copy of the framework of that submission to obtain further input from the division. I am aware that the President of New South Wales Division, Michael Corbin, has broadcast a call for all amateurs to put submissions on the matters of fees and licensing to his division, claiming he has a mandate from government quarters to put a submission to them and that he'll be contacting the President to get your cooperation in putting submissions from you through him to the government. It is clear that Michael Corbin has either misread the invitation or has attempted to turn it to his own advantage. An action which is not only calculatedly divisive, but will be seen by the amateur radio community, and more importantly the government, as divisive. It will be obvious to all of you that, at this important juncture, the picnic needs to act as a cohesive force with a united voice, or else any division in our ranks will be exploited as a weakness, with one side played off against the other. It would come as no surprise that the government has already sent a festival division and has used Michael Corbin as a pawn. It disturbs me that this situation necessitates that I write this. I urge you to throw your cooperation behind the federal submission being developed. I know most federal councillors have already had discussions with Roger, and I want that cooperation to continue. Inform your members and gain their support in any way you can. Now is the time for all of us to pull together to achieve the same goal. It's signed yours sincerely, Neil Pompeo, VK6 November Echo, Federal President. Now to Michael. This is a very, very sad state of affairs. The effort of this division has seems to have gone out the window. I undertook not to criticise the and his immediate liaison officer if the same undertaking came from them. They approached me. I didn't approach them. I readily agreed with the proposal which was put to me by the Federal Councillor, Federal VK3 Councillor, Alan Noble, VK3, Bravo, Mike. For a time, everything in the garden was rosy until the latest attack. I will not sit down and see the hobby of amateur radio buggered up. I don't apologise for using the word, by people who have access to grind when there is an issue as important as this to resolve. The facts are simply this. Federal has been mucking around with this issue since December 1993. A short stroll down memory lane is probably in order. You'll recall that in my broadcast on the 8th of January 1995, I pointed out that as a result of a meeting held on the 4th of December 1994, the VK2WI agreed to help sell the fee of $71 to the amateurs, and that from the horse's mouth. Ms. Christine Wood was furious when she, as a result of the agitations of this division, discovered that no such thing had occurred. Indeed, quite the opposite. Negotiations were suspended pending an apology. I remind you that there was no consultation with this or any other division let alone the federal councillor of this division, on any agreement to this fee of $71. Another meeting was held with our federal people last month, and once again a fee was reached, or agreed on. Nobody knows. Because again, nobody was consulted. This time what was $52, the boss of the SMA told her political minders that everything was okay. Nobody asked us, mere mortal amateur radio licensees, whether we were happy. And I stress it, nobody asked us. Actually, we said it more. It's all blown up again as a result. Just when all the politicians thought everything had been settled down, is it any wonder that any approach has been made to someone other than the WIA? I'll read that bit again. Is it any wonder that an approach has been made to someone else other than the federal WIA? As I said above, the federal WIA has been dealing with this or mucking around since December 1993. Lots and lots have been written in AR. You'll recall what I told you that in my broadcast of the 15th of January. Well, why don't you look up your March 1994 issue of Amateur Radio magazine? Look over the pages to pages 21 and 22. Now, say that again. March AR 1994, pages 21 and 22. In fact, why don't I read your little extract? Just to save you looking it up right away. Yeah, let me see. What? The SMA is devising a licence fee formula and complex to go into. Here's just the author, bandwidth, geographic location, geographic area coverage, number of users and SMA costs. Whether this formula will apply to the amateur radio service or not is unclear at this stage. End of quote. The question is, what was ever done about this? Did anyone out there see a submission? If anyone did, what was in it? Let me quote again from the same article, same column. Remember, it's the third column, this time the fifth paragraph. And again I quote, in future, the SMA might charge for services in the following way. A. Charge an individual for a licence. B. Charge an annual licence fee comprising a tax component and a component for ongoing SMA costs. C. Charge for renewing licences. And D. Charge for services requested as needed. In some instances, users may not be required to pay the tax component of a fee. End of quote. The obvious question here must be, if our federal people knew about this, and they did know because it was reported in AR, why the hell didn't they do something about it? No wonder the SMA and the Minister had had enough. No wonder they jacked up the fee. There was little opposition. But maybe in the same broadcast, I drew attention to another article, this time on page 51 of April AR. Why don't you read this while you're at it, and you can see some references to past licences. The report indicates that a reasonable attempt was made to put the case for an amateur radio, but has anyone seen a copy? The only fair conclusion one might draw is that it was not made clear by the SMA at the time that these things could be changed. The fact remains that the Institute has had an opportunity to do something about its future. For whatever reasons, this opportunity was not availed of to the fullest degree escaped me. Now we have been given yet another chance to put our case, And this time, we must put it as strongly as possible. Given all the above, if you were the minister, wouldn't you ask someone different to make a submission? If you were the minister, wouldn't you insist that this time such a submission must be a consensus viewpoint? If you were the minister, wouldn't you be tempted to come up all well up in the race? In an effort to save this council, I wrote yesterday to the presidents of all divisions, all federal councillors, and all members of the federal liaison team. Now, I'll read you that letter, but before I do that, let's have a space identification. This is VK2WI, the official station of the Wireless Institute of Australia, with its usual Sunday broadcast. This broadcast is relayed through several relay stations. Would those relay stations please now identify? Okay, as I said, I'll read you that letter. Dear fellow presidents, and whatever, it depends on who we send it to. A senior officer in the Spectrum Management Agency commented to me this week, quote, "It's a great shame that at a time when the hobby needs great solidarity, particularly with the advent of cable television and its associated interference problems, the Institute is in such internal turmoil. You blokes need to get your act together before it's too late. To this end, I am appealing to all divisions to set aside their differences and pull together in a united effort. The internal struggling must cease. This division is attempting to provide a submission to the Minister. I have set out below events to date in a letter I am forwarding to all divisional presidents, all federal councillors and all members of the SMA liaison team. Enclosed herewith, please find a copy of my broadcast of the 2nd of April. In this broadcast I have discussed an approach which was made to me by a source close to the Minister to prepare a submission for him covering all aspects of amateur radio. This source has insisted that any submission must be the consensus view of all amateurs. I stress the word consensus view. Accordingly, I seek your support in the preparation of this document. The first thing that must be addressed are the terms of reference. The government has indicated that every facet of our hobby is open for discussion. Could I suggest a method you might like to adopt to stimulate input from amateurs in your state? 1. Create a small committee to collate all the ideas received. 2. Encourage members of your division and others, through your broadcast, to make submissions to this committee. This plan is to ask them to provide you with copies of any submissions they may have made to the SMA during the free debate issue. 3. Give weekly updates on ideas. This will stimulate further input. It is essential that input and ultimate consensus is obtained. 4. Submit final ideas to the members before forwarding them to this division for collation and national distribution for comment from all participating divisions for final comment. The heading is aims and these are suggested aims. A. Establish the place of amateur radio in the community. B. Increase community awareness of the role amateurs play within the community, with emphasis on their role in education of the young, usefulness in times of natural disaster, Whiteson and similar type training events, school activities including space shuttle amateur radio experiments, starring. And what about that proposal in VK4 some years ago to link link the schools together by ATV? Anything come of that, I wonder? Etc., etc. C. Define amateur radio in terms which would become a part of the appropriate federal act. This is a very, very important issue. And that was the phone ringing in the background. I'm not going to do the recording all over just because. D. set guidelines regarding SMA, role in the SMA's role in the ITU, WIA's role in the ITU, the SMA's approach to interference with and by amateur radio stations, etc., etc. Establish special conditions and charges for repeaters. Now, they're about $70 or so. Review costs of special event stations. Note, these stations will now pay $51 for the use of a call sign, or in most cases, only 24 hours. Not important, you may well say, but it is an issue of concern to a small group of amateurs and therefore should be addressed. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. Any additions would be appreciated. From the enclosed correspondence from the Federal President, you might detect an unwillingness on his part to cooperate with this provision. I do not propose to comment directly, except to say two things, and they are: one, this whole thing today has been a case of father, or is it federal, knows best. I believe that this approach has not succeeded, and judging by the volume of criticisms received, should not proceed along these lines. Two, the federal SMA liaison committee has in the past put their views and their views only. I base this on the fact that no attempt has been made to contact this division, or possibly your division, for any input. There was no mention in IR magazine calling for input, ideas, or even the terms of reference of the latest submission. Any suggestion that there was nothing in AR because it was too late is incorrect. Advice could have been in the form of an invoice. And again, the distribution date of the magazine could have even been varied. It could have been sent out late. Could have been indicated at me that this submission is being viewed by the Minister as our last throw of the dice. All this division seeks to do is to facilitate the preparation of a submission which will be an exhaustive, representative summary of all concerns of all amateur radio operators throughout the length and breadth of Australia. A submission everyone has had an opportunity to influence. A submission everyone agrees with. It is suggested that all preliminary input should be received as soon as possible, say the end of this month. A final draft would then be available for amendment and ultimate agreement by the end of May. I look forward to receiving agreement from you and participation in the preparation of a truly national submission on our hobby. I have been told copies of correspondence which has been spread all over Australia, as well as packet messages which have attempted to discredit my actions on this matter of late. I am doing this by way of background only, and as an illustration of the very thing that will destroy us if it persists. You're prepared. Okay, folks? Where do we go from here? Well, if necessary, this division will go it alone. If federal, and it seems to me these days, federal is only two people, won't agree, then our submission will be our submission with acknowledgement of all inputs from all divisions and all individuals. This week I had received some very good information. Already. One AM has gone to a great deal of trouble to prepare his own very detailed submission. He sent it to us, and he's given us permission to use its contents as we see fit. And I thank him and I thank all the others. But once more I appeal to everyone who hears this message or reads this message on packet to support us. It's obviously a case of united we stand, you all know the rest, divided we fall. It's up to you. See you next week.
Well, thank you, Michael. That was the weekly President's tape. And plenty of time there for a rest for the announcer. So thank you, Michael. This is VK2WI with the weekly news broadcast from the New South Wales division of the Wireless Institute of Australia. This broadcast is transmitted from Sydney and through several relay stations. With relay stations, please identify. Right, and now a note from the President, VK2PFQ, regarding a letter from the Spectrum Manager. The following letter was sent to the Federal President last Friday, the 7th of April, as well as being placed on the packet network under the call sign VK3SMA. It refers to a message placed on the BBS network by a New South Wales amateur, in which he made the following statement, and it's quote, "The time is now for all amateurs to have received a renewal of the increased and unlawful at this time fees to first demand an explanation from the SMA office that issued it, then initiate a ministerial demanding to know why the increased tax is being levied before it is law," unquote. The Spectrum Manager, Ms. Christine Good, has requested that we take steps to correct this erroneous statement. The VK2 division will now broadcast Ms. Good's letter in its entirety in the interest of fair play and without further comment. And that was signed by Michael Corbin, President VK2 division. And the letter reads, Mr. N10 President WIA, Specialist Box 21775, Purple Junction, Victoria. Dear Mr. Penfold, there has over recent months been a great deal of incorrect, vitriolic and libelous commentary by amateur operators about the SMA and individual SMA officers, including myself. Most of this we have let pass. I must, however, take issue with a recent inaccurate comment and accusation that the SMA has acted unlawfully. This is not so. Amendments to the Radio Communications Taxes Collection Act, the Radio Communications Transmitter Licence Tax Act, and the Radio Communications Receiver Licence Tax Act, which are currently before the Parliament, provide for the SMA to allow licensees greater flexibility in the way they pay licence fees. The amendments will allow for a licence of more than 1 year's duration, payment up front for the whole period of the licence, or payment by annual instalment. There is nothing in the amendments relating to the setting of fees, and certainly nothing relating to setting of fees for amateurs. The power for the SMA to determine taxes has existed since July 1993 and has been used on a number of occasions. The determinations of fees to take effect from the 3rd of April were made pursuant to Section 7 of the Radio Communications Transmitter Licence Tax Act and Section 7 of the Radio Communications Receiver Licence Tax Act. Likewise, the power for the SMA to determine cost recovery charges under Section 293 of the Radio Communications Act has existed since July 1, 1993. The SMA also exercised that power and determined a set of charges with effect from the 3rd of April 1993. The extent of misinformation